Warning. Some episodes of Where Did the Road Go will contain a warning. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Bill Illuminati, Allison Cook, Yvonne Williams, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have an unusual combination of guests. I have Mr. Christopher Ernst.
Hello, everybody.
And Super Inframan.
Hello. Who is this Christopher Ernst? It's so nice to meet you for the first time, strange sir.
Nice to meet you too, kind sir.
I think we also have Saxon with us.
Yeah, he's right here next to me.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hard to tell them apart.
Talks in my ear.
Oh, I know how that goes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, tonight's show is going to be an AMA show, and occasionally people don't know what that means, and I apologize for that. It's Ask Us Anything, basically. AMA's Ask Me Anything, but, it's Ask Us Anything. And this is something I do for patrons, including public patrons. I do allow a public patrons, like the free patrons, to ask questions, but I don't think anyone did. So our patrons are awesome, and they come up with some of the best questions that are just stretching our brains.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do tonight. Starting with one of the deeper ones, I think. Contemplative Mystic Abroad asks, "Hi, Soraya and team. Longtime listener under many different names. I found your show years ago, and it was the first show I ever listened to that had a view of the paranormal that seemed, well, normal." Which is an interesting way of putting it.
I totally understand that, though.
Yeah, completely.
Reasoned, skeptical, but open to the weirdness of the universe without diving headfirst into aliens have made a secret agreement with the government to implement the New World Order. So thanks. And the fact that we weren't doing that is why I thought this show was going to flop.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I never crossed my mind, but I totally understand why you would think that too. But that's the same reason I became a fan of the show too.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I mean,
me too, completely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the strengths of it, and the maybe there's a small amount of sane people out there that have the perfect right sanity for the show. I mean, to say
clearly there's a lot, and I love that. So he said his question is, I've heard you speak a lot about your magical practice as well as Kundalini and or Seth, but I've never heard you go into details of what your magical explorations or work look like. Is it ceremonial, chaos, new thought, or visualization adjacent? And what did your magical journey look like? I.e. some sort of Crowley Wicca by the way of metal, a weird teacher or family friend, or did you just find a cool book at a library one day? I know you're writing a book. Please release it. I am getting much, much closer to that. But is there a specific episode where you get into the weeds of your magical career and magical inspiration writers, or could you speak to it briefly in the AMA? I don't know if we've done a show particularly on how I got into magic. I know I've talked about it, but I don't think I ever, did a show about that. And that's, I guess it started because I had a friend into Wicca.
Sure.
And so she lent me some of her books, and I was kind of like, oh, these are interesting. And then I did some more research. I mean, this is pre-internet. I was a teenager, and I did more research and realized that most of these books were nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, I mean, there is a, folkloric witchcraft tradition, but that's not Wicca. And because Wicca's more of a modernized version of, magical practices. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that some of the books she was lending me were talking about this being an ancient tradition, and I was learning very quickly that was not how this came about.
Yeah.
So then I met someone through
Marshall McGregor Mathers.
Right, yeah. And Crowley. I mean, really. I mean, the Wiccan
and
Reed.
Crowley too, for sure, yeah.
I mean, the Wiccan Reed, which is do as thou wilt but harm none, is just a corruption of do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Completely, yeah.
It means something different because Crowley's version is very subtle. Do as thou wilt means be your true self.
Find your true will, yeah.
Yeah.
True will under law.
Which is different than do as thou wilt and harm none, which is basically you can do what you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. And both of those, as far as I'm concerned, work.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So then I had started writing people out of the Metal Forces Pen Bangers section. And I didn't realize till I was working on the book what a huge influence the people I talked to through that were. Not just for finding new music, but also I talked to a lot of people who were into the occult and stuff. And made a lot of good friends around the world. Because I was writing a lot of people in the UK, because that's where that came out. Some people here, including one person who wrote me from Ithaca when I put my stuff in there. And, people from Australia, people from New Zealand, people from Japan. But there was one woman from Virginia who I was writing with who was really into Crowley and LaVey. Yeah. And so, I read through all the letters I had from her. And I don't know that we would click now, but getting into that stuff, she was a very good introduction to all of that material. She got me to read Crowley's autobiography, I think, and then, was explaining that Satanism was not worshiping Satan and all this other stuff. And so that's kind of where I started, but I never liked the ceremonial part of it. I always felt very self-conscious if I even thinking about doing stuff like that. So I said one day, okay, I don't really believe this stuff works, but I'm going to give it a shot and just see what happens. And I kind of just did my own thing. I used symbols that were important to me. I went outside with a staff. I did a little ceremony. I burned whatever sigil I made and broke the circle, and that was it, and expected absolutely nothing to happen, which also probably helped. So then when I got results from it, I'm like, okay, that could be coincidence. And so I started experimenting with it. Like, what parts of this do I need? So visualization's definitely a part of it. Meditation's a part of it. Usually creating some sort of sigil that is specific to what I feel is going on, whatever current is going on in my life. So that's where all that stuff kind of came by. Metal didn't have much of an influence on me as far as that stuff goes. It's just once I started experimenting with it, and it was probably that woman, Diane. And she was in her 40s, I think, at that point. And she's one of the people I was able to find on Facebook. She's still alive. And I was going, oh man, I don't know, like that was 35 years ago or so. And I did a little digging and I found her, and she seems to be doing well and she seems to be happy. And I'm like, awesome. All right. Like that makes me happy. But what else was part of that question? A lot of that will be in the book. I don't get into a lot of details. And the Kundalini comes into it too, because that energy can be very powerful to work with. And the same with certain Tantra techniques and stuff like that, especially when I was dating people who also had active Kundalini energy.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, all of that's, I think, it's interwoven, in terms, not necessarily cause and effect, but it's interwoven in the same sort of spectrum. So the same sort of, non-physical things that you're experiencing are all kind of working and can influence one another.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what, I basically was doing chaos magic.
Sure.
I did not know there was any such thing as chaos magic. And I didn't know until, so one of the people I was writing to was in Holland, and she got me into Fields of the Nephilim. And Fields of the Nephilim have a song called Psychonaut.
Yeah.
And that was based on the book by, is it Carroll that wrote that one?
Peter J. Carroll. Yep. Psychonaut and Liber Null are the first. Yeah.
And so when I found that out, I think I borrowed it from was able to get it through the library, and which I did a lot back then because I didn't have any money for books. So I went to the library, got it, and was like, I loved Liber Null, but I didn't like Psychonaut as much. But I really connected with Liber Null because it was kind of already what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm practicing chaos magic. Because I'm taking things from different places that connect with me rather than following a strict paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I think it first started coming out in like the 2000s, but it was like on DeviantArt or something, but you can find it. It's called the Psychonaut Field Manual, and it's like this it was just kind of going around occult circles, and the way that it's the best way to describe it. It's like a PDF that this artist drew that sort of explains, this holistic, like what ritual magic looks like at sort of different levels that engage with these different approaches to it. And one of the ways that I thought was interesting that they pose it in the way that you do a chaos magic, in the way that you perform this chaos magic procedure, is that, you do the regular thing where you visualize, what you want your question to be, or, what you want your intention to be. But you sort of mix it up a little bit where you do like a tarot card layout, and you have basically a 5-card layout where you have your question, what may help you, what may hinder you, possible outcome 1, and then possible outcome 2. And then, you see what those results are. And it's from that result that you create your sigil. So rather than the sigil being, your intention that you write out, you're essentially asking this question or have your attention, you're working through the tarot first. And then let's say, you ended up with, I don't know, the Tower, bad choice.
It was exactly what I was thinking, though. As your result, or for something, then that's actually what you would focus on, is that card itself. So if you want to focus on what might hinder you, or what what possible outcome there might be, that's what you focus on. And I've tried doing it in that way, but using I Ching, which is a similar type of thing. So you have the intermediary of the I Ching, and instead of having your intent that you create the sigil from, you first have the intent, and then you have this sort of, at least if you use the I Ching, you have a poetic representation of it, because you have these, certain number of hexagrams. And so you have another layer of almost occulting the intention before you create your sigil. And I found that to be, it's been a while since I've had, I guess, the energy to do really, intense workings. For me, at least, they are like that, because it does take a lot of energy and focus. And if it doesn't work, you really feel it. So, but I remember this working, for me at one point. And something people might want to be interested in checking out. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is we do co-create reality, and magic is kind of that was one of the things. Like Crowley always said, "Beware lust for result," and that always seemed counterintuitive to me, because I thought, well, don't you want to focus on the thing you're trying to cause happen? Mm-hmm. Like, why would forgetting about it make it happen? And then, of course, reading Seth's material. At some point, he talks about how we create reality with our subconscious mind. And if we're focusing on in our conscious mind, it never goes down to the more symbolic subconscious level where reality is actually created. And I suddenly went, oh, damn it. Did he just explain lust for results?
Yeah. I mean, it sure sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that always made me think of like a sort of, I'm going to call it Zen quality, but that may not be the right term. But, it's kind of like meditation, too, where you can regard something but not focus on it.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big thing that got me into, that idea of regarding something but unfocusing on it. I remember that being a key thing, that's been a big part of this, researching magical practice since beginning, probably from like the Castaneda books I read when I was like 13.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I read that.
I think that's a big part of the, the intent, and I'm completely aware of, everything involving Castaneda and later in life and the witches and stuff like that, the women who committed suicide. But I still think that what Castaneda was cribbing from in his research was legit stuff that he kind of, jumbled up in his narrative that he created.
Yeah, and that was another thing I forgot about that. I actually read some Castaneda early on.
Yeah.
I had a friend who absolutely loved him. And the first time I read him, I was kind of like, I don't know, this doesn't do anything for me. But then I read another book, and it grew on me over time. But some of the practices I thought were interesting, so I tried them, and they worked. And I was like, okay, there is something to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. I mean, there's you can find some of the books that he must have been reading. Like there's a book on novelism. Is in this, he called Don Juan, the figure that either existed or didn't. That was the Nagual, which is, the Toltec sorcerer, which really isn't even, it's really its own thing. It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the Toltec. That's some of the stuff that, Castaneda was kind of jumbling together there. But it's interesting to read that book because you're like, oh, this is like completely Castaneda. This is like teachings of Don Juan. Yeah.
Yep. And one, interestingly, when we were talking about metal being an influence, Sabbath's second record, and it's not a band I would recommend to people who don't like thrash, because they're very much a thrash band, but they wrote the concept album, Dreamweaver, Reflections of Our Yesterdays, based on a book by Brian Bates called Way of Weird, which was based heavily on Castaneda's stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a fictional story about a Christian going into pagan lands and trying to find a way to convert them, but instead he gets converted to paganism by interacting with the spirits.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
And the funny thing about it is they were a UK band. They put this record out. The lyrics are amazing. And it ended up with the book was out of print. And the demand for the book was so great because of the album that it ended up getting back in print because of it.
Oh, that's really cool. Huh.
Oh. So, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's perfect from beginning to end. But again, it's a heavy thrash record. It's not, it's not going to be for everyone. But that was 1988 or 89. I can't remember when that came out. So that stuff did play an influence, but music for the most part didn't play a huge influence in me getting into the occult.
Yeah.
Despite the rumors.
Not for me either, too. They were completely separate. It was honestly, it was art that got, no, that's not true. It was early on, it was being raised, in a, really obscure, syncretic Sufi cult. But, in terms of the actual, it was library stuff too, I think. And then I really started, really diving deep into it when I was exposed to some this intersection between modern, or not modern, but art in general and the occult in grad school. And, I met some weirdo artists from the 60s and they were basically they were like, yeah, everybody was crazy into that stuff. And that's when I think I really started delving deeply into, practice of it and doing research. And you had the internet at that point, because this was like 2000s, early 2000s. So that helped.
Yeah. What I find interesting is sort of the people that kind of went the ceremonial route kind of got to that early, I think, and stayed with it. The group of us all sort of hodgepodged our stuff together over the years.
Yeah.
And then probably got exposed to, Crowley and other ceremonial stuff, a little further along, but we were already messing around with things. But, I kind of had Wicca as a little bit of the gateway drug for me. But, my art mentor was talking to me about Gurdjieff and things when I was, 9,
totally.
And so it's kind of like you, Chris, where I'm just growing up around stuff like that. And then, just the folklore of being in the old poor South, where even though it was the 80s, your parents still grew up with lots of, old wives' tales and things like that were still real for their parents. for your grandparents. And so, there's a presence of that too when I was growing up. But like, I started sort of like coming up with my own processes somewhere in there. Yep. And then,
I was totally doing that too as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. You just start like kind of making
in retrospect, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so the first time I really remember like doing a ritual as an adult, I think I was 19 and we were doing a project in college around, like we had to put on a rock concert basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was obsessed with all the old juke joints and stuff in the Delta, which happened to be about an hour away from where I was in school. And so I would go out to some of those places, on like long drives and stuff like that, just to see them and be around them. And so before we did the concert, I went and got like a bowl of muddy water and a guitar and some other things.
Yeah.
And just kind of did my like pre-ritual before we went out there.
Right.
But that was the first like adult, I'm attempting to do something here kind of thing. And then, I mentioned the old MSN chat rooms. There was that place was awesome. And I hate that nobody that's come across the show has heard me mention that, because I'm sure some of those people probably listen to the show or in the circle still. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I had all kinds of people to learn from there that would just give me different things to look at and try. And so that was great. And what was really fun is most of that crowd were women too.
Sure.
Yeah. So, just a different perspective, whereas most of us in more like the paranormal, there'd be a lot of guys, not exclusively, but it just kind of how it's skewed. And then, we all had Grant Morrison, Chris and I did.
Totally. And, I think the biggest thing was making like a connection between all of these things, which I didn't like. I couldn't, it wasn't until I was an adult that I was able to, and it was probably just me being stupid, that I was able to connect, okay, like this is the stuff I was learning from my parents and from the books that they had that nobody else had, and from the people I was meeting from India that nobody else was meeting. That's also related to, Grant Morrison, believe it or not, in stronger ways than anybody knows, and related to the UFO books that I was, devouring at the library, and, the Crowley books that I was reading. And I didn't really understand the network and web of these interconnections between them. That's what's helped me, at least, in terms of, I guess, trying to come up with my own inner visualization of what, magic or whatever you want to call it is,
Yeah. The way I practice now, I've hardly done a ritual in a very long time. And I did a lot of sigil stuff. I've got my mother box tattoo I've talked about before, where I'll write the sigil in it and let it fade.
That's awesome.
That one's fun. But, we were talking about symbols and all that. Like, I couldn't articulate it till like the last couple of years, but I just asked myself what kind of story I'm trying to tell. And I decided to tell that story throughout my day or throughout my week or throughout whatever experience it is.
That's cool.
And I kind of write it before it happens in my head. And I feel like I'm in a collaboration with reality.
That's really cool.
I like that.
Yeah. And so that's what I get back to now. And then like after Josh's new book came out, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And then kind of looking back at some of the stuff that, Jeff Kripal wrote too, I'm like, oh, this works too. This makes a lot of sense. So anyway.
I would say the other thing that influenced me too, is I started reading Kenneth Grant's books.
Yeah.
And they were not cheap. Those I could not get from the library. There was one bookstore, of all the bookstores I went to in upstate New York, there was only one bookstore in Ithaca that had them. And I think I have 4. That's all I could ever find. But they were imports, and they would be like $45 a book, and this is in the early 90s. But like even though some of his stuff comes across as kind of silly to me, like, cause he's really trying to wedge Lovecraft's mythos into magic.
He's also incredibly verbose and like flowery with his writing.
Yes. And he'll get into like numerology stuff that goes on for half a page. Like this number equals this, equals this, equals this, equals this, equals, and you're just like, okay, I don't even know what I just read, But it did have an influence on certain things, and especially the idea of currents of energy at different times. And that is something that really stuck with me from early on. So a lot of my magical practice was like, okay, the current is shifting. I need to move with it, and trying to anticipate what that current is and kind of do a ritual to move me in that direction. And again, the rituals were different depending on what they were. There were also times I was shown things in dreams, like, you need to do this. And I'd be like, okay. And I foolishly maybe just went and did what I was shown because that's interesting, you know? And I can't say any of it ever backfired on me, so apparently it was a good thing to listen to.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and Ruth had followed this question up by saying, I'd like to know what the purpose of doing magic is. For me, it is mostly what I just described. It's following a current. It's like it's like if life is a river we're going, downstream in, I'm trying to work with that current rather than against it. So by doing magic, I'm trying to change myself to fit that current of energy that I'm currently in, and also know myself better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think mine has changed over time, but I do think it's changed into a more alchemical, look at it in the way that you just said, and that it's helping to get to know myself better. And ultimately, I mean, I think a spiritual, outcome that is getting to know yourself better. I mean, in the simplest way to say it.
Yeah. Or what
your true self, your true will,
and Crowley's holy guardian angel, basically.
Yeah. So I'm 100% on board with what y'all are saying with this too. My friend that she's got a really strong magical practice, but she's getting really stressed out because she was very focused on the outcome, and everything she was doing was very external, and understandably for what she was trying to deal with. But you could tell like it was wearing her out, and I was like, I know you want these outcomes for your children and things like that, but like maybe you need to reframe it to being about you being healthy or in the right place and all these things, where it's about lifting these situations up instead of like kind of trying to create these things at the ends of branches, if that makes sense, of what these other people are doing. For
sure.
And like in these things, these good things will come as a byproduct of trying to improve the things around you and the things around your children and all that. And I think it worked for her. She sure started doing a lot better, and things actually started kind of turning around the way she was wanting them to begin with.
Right.
But, it also sort of changed her outlook because she was, very frustrated and angry about some of the circumstances that created these things. So she was really like attacking them in a certain way that was sort of bitter. And I think it made a feedback loop, and it just made her spiral.
I've done that.
And so it seems like it really kind of helped recenter her. So I was relieved because I didn't know if I was right or not, but I was like, you're exhausted and this is screwing you up, not screwing you up, but you know what I mean? Draining you. And anyway,
it takes a lot of energy, I think. I don't know. And maybe some people don't find that, and they find that if they're doing it in a different way. But yeah, especially I think if you're trying to kind of manifest things in like a physical material world in terms of prosperity and wealth. And I know that goes completely against, people who maybe have had luck with wealth or prosperity magic. But, I don't know. I think that ultimately, if you're looking for that sort of quick material fix, there's no free lunch.
Yeah, there's not. And, Yeah. And going back to, I definitely did a lot of this because I just wanted to see what would happen,
Right. Oh yeah.
Then you try to like engineer things to happen. And now, I focus, just like y'all are talking about, a lot of stuff on myself. And then I look at magic, and that's what I call it these days again, just as my relationship with reality around me.
Yeah.
But I think reality has a relationship with me too. So it's a back and forth, communication, but it can't talk to me in words. It has to talk to me in dreams and symbols, experiences and symbols and things like that.
Synchronicities.
Yeah. And so you have to kind of, you have to, like you're talking about, Soraya, for me, it's sort of like I've got to move with the way it's being communicated back to me and the way I communicate back to it.
Yeah. Contemplative Mystic Abroad responded to Ruth by saying, some people do it for manifestation and it does work for that. Others use it for self-development and self-knowledge, a sort of Western Buddhism or spiritual enlightenment process, often a combination of both. And I think that's not untrue.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, Ren Collier, who's been on here many times, has his own sort of path with this stuff. I mean, I know he's talked about it on here. So if you look for shows with Ren and Magick, you'll get more there.
Particularly ceremonial magic, like coming from, the Thelemic tradition. He's very knowledgeable about that as well.
Is it the OTO he's a part of?
I believe so.
He's made some really great altars and things like that are like handmade and polished. I mean, they look better than anything you've seen in any movie about magic,
Right.
And I've got a couple of, whether you want to call them charms or talismans that he made for me. In classic, like good magic style, he wouldn't let me pay him, but I donated to a nonprofit that he supports.
Yeah.
So there's still an exchange in there, and it's been good.
At one of the Strange Realities, he did his lecture was basically a ceremony that he did with everybody who was in attendance there. This is Strange Realities, which is a small conference that Conspiranormal puts on.
Yeah.
That both Soraya and I have been involved in before, if people are new listeners. And he did a ceremony there, and everybody got a little talisman out of it, which was really nice. That's
cool.
A treasured keepsake of mine.
All right. Let's see. So Anson wants to know, what is your opinion on the further development of humanity? In which direction could it go? Well. My first thing is to say, unless we end this sort of tribalism, fighting each other, we're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
We've been stuck and not everyone, but like as a species, we've been kind of stuck in that mindset that despite the fact that we are one people, there are us and the others, and you get it, pushed onto you from an early age with things like sports and things like, because come on, sports, when people get really into sports, that's tribalism right there.
Right. Adversarialism.
Yeah.
Us and the others.
And you get it, you see it everywhere, Star Trek versus Star Wars. Why does it have to be versus? You see it in professional wrestling where people it's not about wrestlers, but the wrestling companies. Like you can't like the WWE and AEW. No, you have to pick a side. And until we lose that mindset, I don't think we're going anywhere because
probably not. Yeah.
Too many people have that. I mean, we talk about things like transhumanism and genetic modification, but if we don't get that out of us, if we don't evolve past that,
right,
we're not going to go anywhere. We're probably going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
There is no reason that on this planet people should go hungry, not have food, medicine, things like. I mean, we have enough wealth, we have enough of everything to go around. The problem is you have very greedy people who have most of it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And children dying in third world countries because a lot of times the first world countries have gone there and just kind of destroyed them one way or another.
Right.
Either through colonialism or mining or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Every battery we have, every lithium battery needs cobalt. Cobalt is mined in Africa by children, and it is poisonous.
Yep.
And, you don't really hear calls to do anything about it. I mean, we should get away from lithium batteries anyway because they're bad for the environment in every possible way. Mm-hmm. Which is the problem of going green is that, sure, I mean, if we're not burning fossil fuels, that's a plus, but lithium batteries are as bad as anything else for the environment. So it's just trading one thing for another.
And unfortunately, too, a lot of the, like we have found out, recycling was essentially a scam put together by the corporations in order to put the onus on the consumer.
Well, particularly plastic.
Particularly plastic, yes. I should specify, yes. Plastic single-use bottle recycling.
Yeah.
Which we saw in our lifetimes, because of our age. I remember a time when there was just the 20-ounce, 16-ounce bottle is a new invention, It used to just be cans.
Yeah.
And those weird little shorty bottles that look like, Mickey's.
I love those little
Pepsi
glass
had
bottles.
those little glass bottles that had like a foam. It was like a styrofoam label.
Yeah. I vaguely remember those.
Anyway.
But I think that is the biggest obstacle we face, because politics, which is mostly rich people, use that to keep people from working together. I mean, you find an enemy, and it changes who that enemy is here and there. But you find an enemy, you find a group of people, and you push the blame of all your ills onto them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. And it's either based around, like you said, money or nationalism or religion, or a combination of all three or one or two of them.
And the thing is, we all have different experiences in life. We all see things differently. Like, there's no one way to be. Like, people need to strive to be themselves and accept that other people may not agree with them, and that's okay. Like, you cannot agree with someone and still get along with them. You cannot even understand why someone might be a certain way and still get along with them. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes down to people needing to have their feelings or their beliefs validated. Mm-hmm. They don't have enough confidence in who they are. You also have to be like them so they feel more comfortable with who they are. Mm-hmm. So when someone comes along and acts weird to them, it's like, oh, this is weird. I don't like this. I don't like you. You're bad, Yeah.
Yeah. It's, we sort of have forgotten, even when we disagree, that maybe somebody's intentions are very good. It's just the execution that is in disagreement. But our values could be pretty similar. And, a lot of work has been done to make us never consider that. It's I don't know. I'm very fascinated by that aspect too, because it keeps us from finding the places that we do agree with each other.
I think most people want basically the same stuff.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's just they have different ways they think that will work to get us there. Mm-hmm. And there are certainly sociopaths and narcissists and stuff in our culture, but that I think is also a symptom of this.
Yeah.
So
you've heard me rant about this before, so I'll try not to go too far off on it. But, I'm not going to say we won't ever get there, but it doesn't feel like we will to me. I'm kind of in your camp, Sir Iowa. I think at some point we'll just wipe ourselves out one way or the other.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. It's just we have to make some big changes in order to not do that.
Yeah, we got a long way to go. We got a long way to go. And it seems weird that we can't just recognize that these are the things that we do. But I think what we look like if we are able to progress is not what we've pictured. If you look like at the Kardashev scale on types of planetary civilizations and stuff, it's like harnessing all the energy out of a star, and then all the energy emitted in a galaxy or from a black hole. And I'm like, I feel like that's kind of like, we still have horse and carriages, so we just got to figure out how to have a bigger horse.
Right.
Well, it's a very materialist, progressivist,
it is.
Standpoint, and it's still rooted in, I think, a really outdated last century model of science and progress, which is basically that. It's like a big poster that says "Science, Progress, Forward to the Future," and it's this idea that everything is based around sort of material technological advancement, and I think those can be really interesting. It was I think the last episode that I listened to of Where Did the Road Go? This very podcast, where you're talking to the snakes, and they mentioned Peter F. Hamilton's Commonwealth series of sci-fi novels, which does have this interesting. And I think it's either the Commonwealth or it's the sequel to them afterwards, which is part of the same universe, where they basically, sorry for spoilers in the generalist terms, they were searching for sort of the uber civilization of the cosmos that had advanced, to the utmost technological, realm. And basically what they found on the planet was, a species that had abandoned that, and that had cyclically not devolved, but simplified their lives, where there was still technology that existed that was quote unquote high technology, but there was also the old city where it was, this super, dystopian, utopian, sci-fi future city, exactly what you think, stereotypical. But it was a way of life they abandoned because it was one that was toxic and leading to wars and destruction,
right.
Essentially. And so they were, living a much more, to, use the term Zen lifestyle. And this was just simply the old civilization. And I think that even that little way of, which is a very, very, I think minorly, progressive way of thinking about it, but the way in which it is, humanity is destined to be, or our, I guess, best iterations of ourselves, are not necessarily the ones that we've been taught all our lives, are that, which is the sort of, spacefaring, super technology.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's not Star Trek because those were like space hippies because there was no money.
Right.
Nobody wants that. Well, there's laudanum, but
go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris.
No, go ahead.
No, I was go for it.
Oh, and that's exactly it for me too, because if we can get out of our way, then we can figure some of these other things out. And, if we want to bring technology back into it, it's not going to be I'm burning stuff. It's I figured out how to slip around some of the laws of physics and generate energy that's not going to harm the environment around me. And it's not going to look like a power plant over here. It's just going to mean that the things that I need to have power or whatever are fine, but it also means I probably don't have to pay for it because it's probably limitless in some way. So if you do want to get out into space or whatever, it wouldn't look like spaceships either, but I think you probably could become interplanetary, but in a very different way. Everything would be kind of similar to what you were talking about with the novels there too. Because these things always develop sideways when you actually have innovation.
Right.
You can't really predict what that looks like, but if we're really good at it, it wouldn't look like anything.
And I'm a big believer too, and this is very much based around I think my spirituality and the things that are more faith based and what I believe. Is I do think that the cycle model makes more sense to me than a linear progressive cycle.
Yes.
So I think something like the Yuga cycle is a better model of understanding things and I think that we just, like many people said, not many, but, certain folks have said over the past, centuries or maybe thousands of years, depending on how you interpret the time, that we are in the Kali Yuga. And so if that is a technological iron age that is based around basically human, moral and spiritual corruption, and like we're at the lowest point of our existence here, then, maybe things will get better, but maybe not in our lifetime. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how to gauge these cycles? People, argue back and forth over the time, though it does seem like there are a few instances of it lining up with the the precession of the equinox. But,
yeah, definitely. I also think that, we look at these ancient cultures and we're like, oh, they were primitive. Well, they may have been more advanced than us.
Oh yeah.
But they just weren't taking the same, they're like, well, where's the Pepsi cans? Where are the, where's the technology? Where are their digital watches? And it's like what was it? A Hitchhiker's Guide, where he's like, humans think they're very clever because they invented digital watches.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, what does advancement really look like? Does advancement look like bigger and better technology, or a balance between certain types of technology and communal growth?
Right.
And who isn't to say, that if you, get rid of a particular type of technology and try to say, focus on psi technology, that you wouldn't be able to, after centuries of having a culture that's developing their psi, meditation abilities or astral projection abilities, you couldn't travel to another galaxy in the way, that maybe some other beings are doing, I don't know. I mean, and that you sort of gain another type of technology or awareness of how to interact with the world that, can compensate or maybe even be more beneficial than the technological interface we have with our environment. Who knows?
Which is kind of where my head's at, to be honest. Yeah. That's what I hope happens anyway.
I think the problem is most people do not work on themselves.
Yeah.
They do not look for who they really are. They follow what they think they're supposed to do, what they're told to do. You know, they have a pretty preset plan, like, oh, you do this, and then you die.
Yeah.
And instead of like looking and saying, okay, why do I believe this? Why do I think this? Why, you know, and like, if you get angry, why am I angry? What's making me angry? And, you know, like, you know, I've always had this thing, like, it's rare that I get actually angry with someone, because if someone's doing something that's going to make me angry and it's somebody I don't know, what do I care? I'll just walk away from them. Like, you don't matter to me because I don't know you. You know, it's going to be hard for you to make me angry, because your opinion, if you're being nasty to me, your opinion really doesn't matter to me. If it's someone I care about and I'm close to, and they're being, you know, in some way hostile to me, I'm not likely to be angry. I'm likely to be concerned. Why are you behaving like this? You know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that part of what's going on right now, at least we can say just in the United States or the English-speaking world, in the, you know, rise again of the interest in, I think, the paranormal, even if it's just as entertainment, I think combined with like conspiracy culture and the amount of people who are like basically adopting, you know, wildly, divergent views. You know, if people are familiar with hypernormalization and that idea of, there was Adam Curtis, there was a documentary about it, but it basically means it's like a societal system where everybody who's in it, from like, you know, the people who are leading it, you know, and making the decisions to, you know, the people who, the lowest part of it, they have this like artificial, almost simplified view of the world instead of trying to instead of dealing with the complexities of reality.
Yeah.
And that, you know, they have an inability or unwillingness to imagine an alternative to what the status quo is, that, you know, people are, and I hate to say it because it's part of so many, you know, terrible, you know, things that are going on, this idea of waking up.
Yeah.
I do think that people are, you know, more and more people are breaking out of that idea that, no, I you know, the idea that you mentioned, Soraya, of, you know, this is my, you know, I'm born, I have to do this and do this and do this, and then I die. And that, but they don't know where to direct it. And that they don't have a good outlet. They don't have a good leader. They've got terrible leaders, in fact. And that it's like, so it's, doesn't know where to go. And so it maybe is good, even though it's not, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things that I find both disheartening, but at the same time, it's great to see, even though there are a lot of people that are putting it in the wrong direction, I think, and some of that includes fascism, maybe, you know, that they put in the wrong direction.
Fascism's always the wrong direction.
And that's where humans seem to have been going, you know,
over and
for
over
centuries.
Again. Yeah,
it's one of the directions. Cults are another one, but you know, I think there's restlessness happening here, which again, for me, I go back to the Kali Yuga. Yeah.
And I feel like, okay, like you mentioned cults, the problem is, and you see it with the paranormal too, people want answers, you know? So if someone, especially particularly good con men, come along and tell you they have the answers, well, that's what you want to hear. That's how cults get started.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I can look at someone's work and their ideas and be like, oh yeah, I agree with this, but not completely. But I'm going to take some of this because it connects with me, and I'm going to use that to help me figure myself out. You know, it's like no one else can answer who you are, why you're here. Only you can do that. Like, no religious group can do that. No leader can do that, like political, religious, whatever. You have to find that inside yourself. And if people started doing that, we would be in a much better world. That I think is how we move forward, when people start doing that, when they start living their lives as their, you know, their true selves, you know, in connection with who they really are.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to experience what's going to fulfill you in the world.
Yeah.
Now, in saying that, you know, if someone's true self is to be a serial killer, well, maybe that's not a good thing. But I think, again, that's an aberration caused by the way our society is.
Yes. And I think that people, you know, people will jump through hoops to argue for that sort of selfish, you know, that selfish model of of living, but I don't think that it is, there is any naturalness to it. I don't think you see it in the animal world if you see a real, like a thriving ecosystem. I think that you see that kind of behavior when you have a decaying ecosystem, and look at us, humans, I think are, maybe decaying.
Not going to argue that, unfortunately.
Zombies.
I mean, that is what we have, is a lot of zombies out there, unfortunately. I was going to say something else. And the thing too is understanding again that we are here together. We're not separate. We're not against each other. We survive with cooperation.
Oh yeah.
And yes, sometimes you have to, fix the problems that come along that some people might cause again. And I think those are aberrations based on the way our cultures and stuff are. I think it's the Dogon who, like, if two members of the community have an issue, they will sit them down, and I think the whole like tribe sits around them, if I remember right, and they will have them sit there and talk and deal with it until they work it out. There's no fighting, there's no violence. It's just like, okay, we're gonna help you work this out. And granted, it's easier to do if you're a small tribe than a metropolis, but still, that concept of working things out rather than fighting people. And, of course, bring things like drugs and alcohol and desperation into things, and that's a whole bunch of other issues.
Yeah.
All right. Now
that we solved all the problems of the world.
Yeah. Or at least illustrated a few of them. We're going to go with a fun one from Seed Person.
Oh, cool.
If a portal opened up in front of you, are you jumping through it? And why or why not? So my initial response is yes. But then as I think about it, I go, maybe. I guess it depends what kind of portal it is.
Yeah.
If it would stay open.
Yeah, that would be the other thing. Like, is it going to stay open? Am I going to get trapped? I mean, like my initial thought is I want to see what's in there. Where's
so
that
is it like a Doctor Strange sling ring portal? Is it like a Stargate SG-1 portal where you have you can't see what's through it? Or is it like just a giant fiery orb? And if it looks like I'm jumping into fire, I mean,
right.
Hard.
Yeah. I think I would do everything possible to figure out it was safe for me to go through, and then I would. But I would want to do those things because, to Chris's point, I don't want to jump into the atmosphere of like a gaseous planet and die immediately, or worse, fall for a really long time before I die from suffocation.
Right.
See, I think it says a lot about, what my core beliefs are at the moment about anomalous phenomenon, that I think that there's some reasoning behind them.
Right. Yeah.
So I wouldn't, I guess I wouldn't believe that it would be random. And I guess, that there's some predestination and, so that would make me, I think, the reason why I wouldn't now is because I got a family, but
sure.
If this happened to me when I was in my early 20s, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. and that would be my other reservation too, is like, I would have to make sure I could get back to my wife.
Yes, of course.
She needs me, apparently.
Right.
I don't know why.
And that is my free will. And maybe it's ignoring, a certain predestiny that will mean that I have to reincarnate again to do something else. But I think that's what free will is.
I mean, my gut says, "Ooh, portal."
Come on.
Yeah, going through that, and then like my rational brain goes, "What are you doing, idiot? You don't know what that is."
I totally will stick my head through before
I'd put my hand, maybe a bit of my finger through first, like. Okay, still have my finger.
Out of touching something creepy,
Like maybe take a stick first, put the stick throh, pull the stick.
I was going to say, y'all are being awfully brave. I absolutely would stick a stick through first.
Right? Yeah. Tape your phone to a stick and put it through.
Yeah. Exactly.
You don't want to take pictures first, maybe some video, upload it to the cloud.
Yes.
Then stick the phone through. So if the phone gets destroyed, you still have the pictures.
But you guys know if this truly was, happening, that it would be, you would put your phone down on the stump right next to it because you were thinking about something else, because that's the way the Oz effect works.
Right. Yeah.
That's true. So going to your point about that, like, because the Oz effect has that strange sort of effect on you, is that I think you would probably know if you could safely walk in through it, just like, Chris, you were saying that there would be some intention behind it.
Right.
And so, in that case, I just do it. Yeah,
that's the call to adventure.
Yeah. So Seed Person, I've had a lot of discussions over, Messenger over the last few years. And,
nice.
Talked about like visions and things like that, and some of those experiences like I had with the ketamine therapy. And, some of that stuff you just have to go with because otherwise it's going to be really awful. the experiences and things that those kinds of things reveal in psychedelics. And I think, but you also know that you should go along with it, even though it might be a little overwhelming. And so I kind of wonder if it would be similar to that, where you're just like, this is the call. I've got to go.
Yeah. That would be another thing, like if you had a sense about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Quick mid-show break here and a recommendation. First of all, contact info. If you have a story you want to share, stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. We will read it on the air. If you want to come on the show and talk about it, that's the same address, stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. That is the best way to submit anything related to stories or whatever. If you are someone who has written a book or you're a researcher and you want to come on, it's booking@wheredidtheroadgo.com. And everything else can go to contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com. That's pretty simple. And you can also just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com, and there's a little pop-up box if you want to send me a message. There's ways to donate. There's all our social media. Everything is there. Everything is linked. And those email addresses are there in the contact section as well. If you want to become a patron, it'll get you extra stuff almost every single week, sometimes longer than the main show, and kind of a more relaxed conversation most of the time. Also, you get the shows early and commercial-free, and it helps us out a great deal to keep going. If you like heavy music, check out my music show, The Last Exit for the Lost. You're going to hear a lot of stuff you're not going to hear elsewhere. www.thelastexit.org. You can check out an archive that goes back a very long time. And new shows are on Mixcloud, so you can just pick up wherever you are and listen on demand. Okay, for a recommendation, I'm actually going with a pretty popular one, I think, at this point, because I watched it and I really enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to, and that's the new Final Destination movie, Bloodlines. It's a Final Destination movie. I didn't have super high expectations, especially being, I don't know what part sequel at this point, but it was actually really good. So, if you have any interest in those type of movies, that's definitely one. That's one of the best ones they've done as far as Final Destination goes. I really, really liked it. So that's my recommendation, and now back to the show. So I'm here with Chris, Saxon, and Super Inframan.
Hi, and Saxon says hello.
Hello.
And so we have a question here from Apostately. And Apostately? And
okay. Yeah.
It's not...
apostate, not pasta. Yeah.
Yes. And it's sort of in line to a question we just answered, but different. They say, I would like to know your thoughts on, how shall I put it, society's development and our assumptions. When people from our Western society think about so-called primitive people living today, we assume that they have always lived thusly and that they have continued in their ancient ways for tens of thousands of years unchanged. I'm talking about the, quote, lost tribes of the Amazon kind of societies. I've started to question that assumption. First of all, there are many hints and remnants of disappeared advanced civilizations. For example, the vast terraced landscapes in Peru and the early accounts of Europeans traveling along the Amazon River, glimpsing broad highways and populous towns that later were all gone. Secondly, we have various groups of people in our own Western societies, such as the Mennonites and the Amish, who choose to live with more limited technology than the surrounding communities. Thirdly, these so-called primitive societies often have advanced knowledge of medicinal plants and other elements in their environment. Could it be that these people are the descendants of people who chose to live in a simpler way, who left the hustle and bustle of their big cities and the banality of their politics, people who chose to get back to the land. This yearning is common in our society, and I don't think we should assume that we are the first people to feel that way. All human societies change and evolve, including those we assume have been the same since time immemorial. And we kind of touched on this idea in the earlier question, but bringing up the Amish, for instance, is an interesting question, because let's say we get hit with a solar flare that knocks out all the electric on the planet. Every piece of technology we have is now junk. Who do you go to? Well, you go to the Amish, because they're unaffected by what just happened.
Right. Sure. Yeah, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to continue life just as always while we sit there and go, help? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the sense of the Amish, I mean, I think that, they're not there because I think they wanted to necessarily get back to the land. And, this is a lot of if you're not talking about, I think, tribes that have been existing in a less technologically advanced, area because of contact or choice, or economics, say in certain parts of, I don't know, Africa, where you have the tribes that live in the bush area, or, the Amazon. I guess there isn't much left, but I think that a lot of those, like the Amish and the Mennonites and stuff, that's very religious based, and that's almost, I don't want to say cult in the a derogatory way.
All religions are a cult of some sort.
Okay, so yes, it's it is a small sect that comes from a particular religion, and so it's usually based around religious ideas that I think, frankly, are quite oppressive. So for me, I it doesn't seem to me like getting back to the land in that way, I think, is necessarily a positive way forward, but that's just me. I also was reading an article recently about rampant, sexual abuse in the Amish community, in certain Amish communities. It was a pretty disturbing piece.
I have heard of that, actually. Yeah. And also I found out one of the shows I did years ago, I had a woman who wrote books about weird stuff locally. And she talked about, and I don't think we got to it on the air, but in the book, she's talking about the Mennonites versus the Amish. So for people who don't know, Amish cannot own like computers or cars or anything like that. They can use them, so they're allowed to use them. They can come into your house and watch TV with you, but they can't own a TV. So there's very specific rules. Mennonites can drive cars, use computers, so on and so forth. And the variation here is like the interpretation of one line in the Bible.
Yeah.
Has these two completely different factions that most people mix up. They don't realize they're different, but they are different. And they've, of course, evolved from that point out where they're much different. Yeah. But they're all, again, it's from one single line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's that tribalism again. You don't agree with me? We're going to go a different way. We can't, and not to say that the Mennonites and Amish are at war or anything, but I mean, it's a...
Well, no, I mean, that's like how all the different sects, it's essentially... Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like, that's every...
we don't like the way the church is doing things. We want to do this, and this.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's usually...
Sometimes it's the king who wants to get divorced. Sometimes it's people who want to wear buckles on their hats and have no fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also the point he made about, like, ancient civilizations being more advanced. Yeah, we see stuff in these ancient structures that we don't know how they did. And not only that, but we can't do it today.
Yeah.
So I think part of his point is that, like, these people may not have always been like what we're seeing now, and it may not have been unchanged for all this time. This is where they may have kind of cycled back to after the fall of their civilization.
Oh, yeah. Sure. I mean, I think, as I previously said, I'm very much an adherent of the cycle model. So I think that, I don't know about any sort of direct descendants. I think getting into this idea of, sort of racial descent, and I don't know if that's where they might not have been inferring that at all. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's a weird thing, and I think it's more about like different cultures and how the different cultures exist. But it's funny to think about that question because take somebody like how I personally think Edward Casey's interesting and worth looking at in terms of the things that he said. And he talks about how, essentially because of the cataclysms for whatever, that affected, the different islands known as Atlantis and Poseidia or, Mu, Og, that they, over several thousands of years, up until about 12,500 years ago, they had, basically their civilizations that were then destroyed. And so these people integrated then with these different cultures, going to the Yucatan, going to the mountains in the Pyrenees, going to Egypt. And, this goes into some of ancient Egypt's, technology and stuff like that. But this was essentially a dissemination of a more advanced civilization, with one that was, less advanced. And they still were, humans that could interact with each other and they shared stuff. One was obviously, this sort of refugee civilization that then was, looking to integrate to a less technologically advanced one. But I think that there could be different degrees of that kind of interaction going out throughout history, like, far before, we have recorded history wiped out by the ice ages, especially if we had much smaller populations, and most of it's underwater, or a lot of it's underwater.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think there is a certain hubris baked into, our archaeology and how we try to piece together, the timeline of humanity.
Right.
Because we don't want to believe that there could have been different catastrophes that, wiped out groups of people, whether it's solar flares, comets, any of these things. But, there seems to have been a lot of stuff that happened. It wasn't just like 65 billion years ago, a comet hit the Earth, that or something like that. I mean, Tunguska almost happened. If that thing had an air exploded before it hit the ground, that would have been a pretty incredible event.
Or if it happened over a populated area.
And that's what a lot of people think the Younger Dryas was, and why you can't find these, just as one example, why you can't find these craters is because they were air bursts. And imagine if Tunguska didn't happen over uninhabited Siberia, or if a whole bunch of those came because it was a particularly, intense torrid meteor shower, come on.
Exactly. And then, you combine that with like how sparse the fossil record is and how rare certain types of things preserve, from building materials and what have you. Like there are all kinds of things, creatures that existed that we will never know about. Because we're never going to find a preserved piece of a skeleton from this or that. And so there's plenty of room in there for humanity to have been around a lot longer, to see the cyclical nature of civilizations and all of these things. But, the finding the evidence for it and then being willing to admit that that's what the evidence is instead of saying, because we don't want to believe that bad things could happen like that are outside of our control. So we just sort of, close our minds off to it and, walk the other direction and pretend we didn't come across that piece of evidence that makes it look like the Younger Dryas was a catastrophic event,
Well, there's definitely, again, part of this goes to when science was new, basically.
Right.
Fighting against the church for people.
I think a lot of it still does. Yeah.
And so
part still.
We didn't want anything that would verify the flood or giants or anything that's written about in the Bible.
Yep.
And of course, we've found plenty of stuff that's written about in the Bible turned out to be true. And the fact that like every culture has a flood myth. I think there's only one culture on the entire planet that does not have a flood myth. Mm-hmm. So that there's something there. And we have like the Carolina Bays is one of the things they're thinking is the comet that caused the Younger Dryas. But the question is,
I believe that was also one of the places where whoever that weird Belgian or Swiss guy, the guy who was running the Smithsonian around like 1900, Herzl, I think was his name. He was the guy who that sort of, it was turned into a sensationalized sort of thing about the missing giant bones, but that they like Smithsonian, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, he was hiding giant bones, but it's not exactly the way that I think there was a story that sort of got it a little wrong. Anyway, yeah, no, he completely was absolutely, he had made up his mind, and there was an edict that was put out to all Smithsonian and essentially, everything going on, in America. So you had the time where essentially America was, really digging into the land and expanding, or not expanding because it had already expanded to California, but it was industrializing. And so this was the guy who was in charge of the Smithsonian while the United States was industrializing. So all of the construction and renovation that was happening that was displacing all of these old earthworks and monuments and mounds, he was the guy that was in charge of what happened to the stuff that was in there. And he boxed it all up. He was, and this is something that is completely provable. Whatever Snopes says, absolutely this happened in history,
Yeah.
Well, and the giant bones are still, I think it was Micah Hanks who found that they are still in the Smithsonian records.
Sure.
But they are inaccessible. Yeah. They won't let you look at them. And
some of them were repatriated to native tribes.
And some of them have probably just deteriorated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is that, and he talks about the Amazon here, and how they had, all this stuff. But
that Portuguese friar who went and did that record, absolutely. Yep.
And we have now, LiDAR data that shows these roads, these cities that existed in the Amazon that we had absolutely no clue about.
Right?
Yeah. There's so much they're finding. I mean, every time they do a study, there's more that they find.
And there was one just recently. I know I posted it to the Where to the Road Go group, which I don't know how to easily get to on my phone. Let's see, there we go. Where they just discovered a few new cities right in Mexico, with full pyramids. I mean, large pyramids, and it's like this stuff was incredible 3,000-year-old city of pyramids discovered by archaeologists, not in Egypt. I don't care what you show it to be in. Not in Egypt is how it ends. Believed to be one of the most ancient and important ceremonial centers of the Mayan civilization, the ceremonial center named Los Abuelos was discovered in the dense jungles of Guatemala near the Mexican border. Okay, now I got to go to this site. That's all I can read at the moment, apparently. Yeah. But anyway, you get the point. There was actually a couple of sites there, I guess. They found another city, and these were cities. These were not just like a single little pyramid. And they've been right in front of us all this time.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, this is just a thing that frustrates me because, we are careful and we still have some of the old British racism built into archaeology. Like the noble savage idea. And supposedly, we've gotten that out. But at the same time, we can't give people from certain places credit for being there longer than we thought they were.
Right, right.
And that really frustrates me too, because it's like, well, hold on. You can't be that advanced, So every time we talk about like Gunung Padang or like we're talking about now with, South America having all of these places that are hidden by growth, it's so much goes into the denial of that, or, that the Sphinx has been there for so long. Those are things that are characterizing the ingenuity of humanity and the people that were in those places. You're saying that they were doing really cool stuff for a really long time. And, the reply is like, oh, no, it can't be that. We weren't that advanced. People there couldn't have done that. And I'm like, this still kind of sounds like the same sort of racist views. To be honest.
I mean, there's, you look at the walls in South America, that look like they were, the rock was softened and molded into place.
Tiwanaku and Pumapunku.
Yeah. You look at the size of stones that people moved, and there's the story about, they will tell you that Machu Picchu is Incan. And there's the story about the Incas trying to move a single smaller block up to Machu Picchu, and it killed like 2,000 people in the process, and they never got it up there. But yet this is supposed to be, the culture that made this place, but they can't even bring up a single block and repair it. Not because they're stupid, but because it's almost, it's such a hard thing to do just with manual labor, which implies there was a different technology used, or one of the possibilities too is that this was at a much lower latitude at some point and got pushed up because of a cataclysm. Science doesn't like cataclysms. It was the main thing that they attacked Velikovsky for, because not only was he presenting ideas that they didn't like, they don't like catastrophe. And I think part of that is because if we accept that catastrophes happen, we also have to accept that they can happen. You know, like not just in the past, but something could happen in the future.
Right. Exactly.
And we don't like that. I mean, understandably, we don't want to think we're going to get hit with a solar flare or an asteroid or anything like that, but it's a real possibility.
Well, especially at this point, that would certainly change if people really believe that to happen, that would change, I think, the demands that the people put on those in power. And they certainly don't want, anything getting in the way of all the crap they're throwing in our way, to confuse, to satiate people.
I think it was Whitley Strieber who said they had presented a bill to protect like the power grid against solar flares and stuff like that. And it wouldn't have cost very much at all in the grand scheme of things. Like compared to most bills, it was nothing. And it just got turned down flat because they're like, we don't need this. It's like, you don't need it today. You might need it tomorrow, though. Maybe, do the smart thing rather than the greedy thing.
Right.
And again, how do you fix that mentality? It's not, it's just there, it's like built in. We worry more about, like today than planning for tomorrow.
Exactly.
I mean, not all of us, obviously. But, and sometimes we're forced to. Sometimes we can't plan for tomorrow because we're so stressed about today. But that would have been a simple thing to implement and protect us from solar flares. Another Carrington event can do massive damage. I mean, we've been hit with a number of not big solar storms. This is the thing, not big solar storms that have caused auroras pretty far south. And they don't really have a solid explanation as to why that is. And
people have seen this. I mean, it's all over social media.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, those are the time. I mean, it takes generally a massive solar storm to see auroras that low. And we're getting them from mild solar storms, which says what's going on. And maybe it won't take a massive flare to do the damage that, maybe other things have changed. Maybe the Earth's magnetic field has changed. Maybe the sun has changed in some way. But it's something we should be aware of. And there's been numerous blackouts that have accompanied some of these storms that they never really could explain why there was a blackout. They were just kind of like, we don't know what happened, but we're fixing it.
Could be more things coming out of the sun than we know about.
True. Yeah.
And it also occurred to me, this may just be precursors to a larger solar flare.
Sure.
As activity builds up.
And so, I mean, that's something I think we should have, that and the threat of asteroids are the two things that I don't understand why more hasn't been done.
Yeah.
Why more money hasn't, I mean, this is extinction level stuff. And I was talking to you guys about maybe doing a show on doomsday predictions at some point, but like you get doomsday preppers and there's, I don't have an issue with people doomsday prepping, building a shelter and knowing how to grow your own food and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But like for some of us, like myself, if I don't have insulin, being diabetic, I'm not going to last long. So it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
How much insulin can I store up?
Right.
If our culture collapses, if our society collapses, they're not making any more insulin.
Right.
Yeah.
If the zombie apocalypse happens, like the only way I'm going to survive is raiding drugstores for insulin and hoping to get there first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and how long is it shelf stable? Is it going to last long enough throughout your life? I mean, there's so many.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, the general shelf life of insulin is supposed to be 2 years. Mm-hmm. But like most medications, it doesn't mean it just stops working after 2 years. It means it's less effective after 2 years.
Yeah,
right.
Like expiration dates on food. It's not that the minute that expiration date hits, you shouldn't eat it. I mean, you probably shouldn't, depending on the food. But it's often, it may not be good. We can't guarantee it's good after this point.
Right.
And medication's the same way.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then just to add to that, things like some people have horrible vision.
Yeah.
Who's going to grind lenses? if society collapses for you, can you get to that person that still has some of those machines?
Sure.
Yeah.
That has some of those tools?
I mean,
or are you just going to be, functionally blind for the rest of your life?
There's plenty of stuff we have in our society to help people who have issues of varying kinds, right? But if society collapses, those things go away.
Yeah.
And that's it. And until society starts to rebuild, you're probably not going to have those things again. And by the time that does, it could be 10,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Because if we get knocked back to the Stone Age, again, it's a cycle, and then we'll build up again.
And look how all of our information is stored.
Oh, yeah.
It's not physical.
Well, some of it is. Some of it is,
but a lot of things these days are not.
Yeah.
So how do you even get access to a lot of that knowledge to rebuild? And then that's the other thing too. Like, not that I'm saying that there was a cloud, 13,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, but methods of record keeping often don't last very long.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah.
Even books.
And so, paper disintegrates.
Yep.
All these things. So yeah, if something happens, you're going to lose a lot of your accumulated knowledge too.
And that's also why ancient cultures often relied on an oral tradition and mythology.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or that's what was left.
Yeah. So we have time for one quick one, and I think this fits in nicely. Liam Huddock wanted to know our thoughts on the Roman dodecahedrons. And for a moment, I'm thinking the Roman dodecahedrons. And then as I thought about it, Ruth responded to them by saying, I thought they were a tool for making gloves. I remember seeing a video of a woman doing it.
Oh, the dodecahedrons.
Yeah. Like those finger knitting tools. And that's the thing. So we found these things that just look bizarre. And we're like, what the hell are these? What would they have done with this stuff? And it turns out that because archaeologists don't do stuff like that. So they had no idea what they were looking at. But then someone who made stuff like gloves went, oh, that's for making gloves.
Yeah.
So I suspect that is probably exactly what it is, because it's something you would need. It's a practical thing. And it looks weird.
Yeah, they're strange. My wife, who is an expert at knitting, said it could possibly be that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know 100%, but I would lean toward that being the most logical explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it cracked me up when you would see people arguing that it was like a viewfinder or a way to
They remind me of the scarabray, some of the scarabray bead things. I don't know if you guys know that scarabray. It's like in Scotland. It's a Neolithic sediment. So they had these weird like little stone things. They think they were for ceremonial purposes, but they were similar sort of like carved stone balls, similar types of shapes. But it could just be geometry.
And Scarabray is a weird place too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say Laird Scranton's come on to talk about that before.
Yeah.
But the thing I was just going to add in there though is this is an example of something that we don't have a record of.
Right.
We have a lot of examples of the actual device, tool, whatever it is, from a civilization that we feel like we know quite a bit about, and we don't know what these things are, and they're quite abundant.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are out of time, and we have plenty of more questions, so I think we should just do a part 2 at some point because we've got lots of great questions here. And of course,
good ones.
This is generally something I have patrons do. So again, if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month, and you get all kinds of stuff, extra shows, and the show's early, commercial free, and you get to, throw us questions that then have us talk about 4 of them throughout the entire length of the show, because they're really good questions.
They really are. Yeah.
So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Strat.
I want to thank all of my Patreons for their support and help keeping this show alive. It is because of you I can keep doing this, and I thank every single one of you. A special shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more a month: Greg Ross, Andrew Nichols, Cherry Trapezoid, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Mark Smith, Marty Garza, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Tyler Glimstead, Christine, Abby Allen, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Billuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy Incommunicable, Seed Person, The Ghost Story Guys, Corey Nelson, Diane B., Empty K, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, Jay, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Jonathan Frost, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Liam Huddock, Lauren McLean, Linda from Michigan, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Shoemaker, Mark Brady, Mothman Bren, Automaton, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sasha McHale, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Varosh K, Victoria, Vincent Trewell, Will Cherry, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Colin Karras, Craig Sagastumi, and Matthew Brown. Thank all of you so much for the support. There is a Patreon segment to go along with the show. It is not AMA related. So the next show will be AMA Part 2, and then we field some of the leftover questions in the Patreon segment. But this Patreon segment is completely different and does not relate to the AMA show like they usually do. That's why I'm pointing that out. So, yes, if you're a patron, it's only $3 a month. You get extra content all month long. You get extra stuff. You get shows early, commercial free, and all that fun stuff. And it's, again, just $3. So if you like the show, it's the best way to support us. Also, if you want to support us, leave us a good review on wherever you're listening to us. Recommend us to friends, things like that. There is merch on the site, and I will hopefully at some point get that out on something other than just TeePublic, because a lot of people don't seem to like TeePublic. I know people mentioned they wanted it on Redbubble and stuff, so I will, when I have some time, get to that as well. I want to throw a shout out to a new patron this week, being Mac, I assume, M-A-K. Welcome. I hope you enjoy the content. All right, so I'm trying to end the shows with like a quote or a lyric or something like that. And last week, I think it was, I did Sabbath. I'm going to do Sabbath again, but from a different record, because Martin's writing changed a lot between album 1 and album 2 of Sabbath. Album 3, he had left the band, and it's not a good record. But if you like thrash, especially, these two records are classics. This one was actually, it's a concept album written about a book called Way of Weird, which was a fictional story by Brian Bates. Yeah, Brian Bates. He took a lot of his stuff, source material, kind of to build this universe from like Carlos Castaneda and other shamanic and Celtic traditions. And he did the books. The book is really good. If you haven't read the book, it's worth a read. The album, however, man, Martin just went to town with this thing, and the book was out of print when this came out in like 1989. The demand, particularly in the UK where they were from, for the book after the album came out was so high that it got the book repressed. So that's really cool. Martin has always been a big literature person. Yeah. So the beginning verses of How Have the Mighty Fallen. Denizens of sylvan places, hidden from the eyes of man. Courtesans with sylph-like graces, dancing to the pipes of Pan, that echoed through the ether notes that soured the wings of Halcyon. Songs to give our life the meaning that we lack, now they have gone. Watch the pattern ever changing in the tapestry of fate, weft and weave and interlacing, silken strands that fabricate a cloak to fit both king and beggar. Those who rule and those that toil are equaled in the fact that all pay homage to this mortal coil. And even if you don't like the music, you can always look up the lyrics. They're all online. And yeah, as I said, he's a great lyricist and currently not really doing anything. After Sabbath, he did quite a few albums from Skyclad, and then a one-off with a band called The Clan Destined. And since then, I don't really think he's done anything new, unfortunately. So, see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.